Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and today I want to talk about some theories and speculations I have regarding Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, and all of this is just for fun, just pure brainstorming for the sake of it. Previously I made a video theorizing that maybe Jack Crusher is not actually Picard's son, but in fact a clone of the original Jack Crusher, Beverly's first husband. There seem to be a few clues for it in the first episode, like showing that box that contained Jack's belongings, which maybe she used to get his DNA, but since then, they've been building up this relationship between Picard and his son, and so it will be highly disappointing if it turns out it's not actually his son, and it will be very repetitive because there was an episode exactly like that in TNG, when he met his long-lost son, which turned out not to be his son in the end of the episode, so I highly doubt they will do that now. And also the fact that Riker says that he looks like Picard, and also when Picard first met Jack, he didn't recognize him as his old best friend and all of that, and so it wouldn't really make sense if it's Jack Crusher's clone. And he probably is Picard's son, especially since, they talked about his legacy in the first episode, how he doesn't have a legacy, and he's pretty old now and in a synthetic body, so probably isn't able to produce new children with anyone, so it's the last opportunity to give him an heir, basically. But obviously there's something very special about him. They are building up this whole mystery box that he has some unusual powers and abilities. So let's talk about the possibilities. First of all, maybe Beverly simply enhanced him somehow. Maybe she genetically engineered him, made him augmented in some way. Maybe because she was so afraid for his safety and wanted him to be able to protect himself. This is also highly unlikely because it would be kind of immoral, and also she seems to be surprised by Jack's abilities. So I don't think it's something she did deliberately. Another theory is that maybe Picard still had some Borg nanoprobes in him when he impregnated Beverly, and maybe that somehow passed down to Jack. Maybe he's some sort of human Borg hybrid with some enhanced abilities because of that. I highly doubt that theory too, because Beverly would be able to detect it. I mean, she is a doctor. No doubt she did tests on her own body when pregnant and on Jack when he was growing up and all of that, so I highly doubt that theory. And also the visions that Jack keeps seeing has no clues of anything that is similar to the Borg in any way. He seems to be seeing all kinds of organic vines growing everywhere and strange red energies and stuff like that, so it doesn't seem similar to the Borg in any way. What it is kind of similar to are the Pah-wraiths from Deep Space Nine, the wormhole aliens who have been expelled from the wormhole and became kind of evil. We've seen that they are able to possess people and to take over their bodies, and their eyes turned red, which is exactly what happened to Jack in one of his visions. As he was seeing himself killing people, his eyes were red, and he's seeing all these red visions, and he sees entire cities burning and stuff like that, so it is kind of similar to the Pah-wraith idea. However, if he's the hero of the story and the bad guys are chasing him, so maybe it's not actually a Pah-wraith that is trying to control him, but actually a prophet, a wormhole alien. And since the wormhole aliens are non-linear, they exist outside of normal time, maybe that will explain how come in some of his visions there seem to be premonitions of the future. Like in one of them he saw himself in a Starfleet uniform, and only later Seven gave him the same exact uniform to wear to hide him better, but he didn't know about it when he was having the vision, so obviously he kind of saw the future, and that's also what protected him from the changelings, because he was able to defeat them, because whoever was sending that vision to him knew what's going to happen in the future, and so that saved him. But it still begs the question, what makes Jack so special? Why does that entity only able to communicate with him specifically and not anyone else? So let's look back at some of the history from TNG. What do we know of the Howard family, Beverly's family? We know from the episode Sub Rosa that an anaphasic life form found her family centuries ago and discovered that their biochemistry is compatible with its own energy matrix, and that's why it stayed with her family for centuries, for generations, and was behaving like a lover of the Howard women specifically. And so it began an unusual symbiotic relationship with her whole family. Like each generation it would stay with one of the women in that family to use her as kind of a host for itself, because it cannot contain molecular cohesion for long without an organic host or an object containing some plasma fire or something like that. And so it's kind of similar to the idea of the Pah-wraiths, who also had to use organic hosts or to imprint themselves inside certain objects if they're outside of the wormhole. They cannot just exist on their own for long since they are incorporeal, so they prefer to use an organic host. And so maybe that anaphasic life form, that incorporeal being, that ghost, was kind of similar entity to the wormhole aliens, and if Beverly's genetics has something unique in it that makes it compatible, maybe it explains why the same kind of entity now wants Jack Crusher, because he also has the same kind of biochemistry, the same trait of Beverly's family, which that ghost used for centuries. It passed from one woman to the next and making them their hosts for centuries. And maybe that also somehow influenced her family's DNA, if that energy entity kept infusing itself into each woman in that family. Maybe it somehow changed their DNA as well, and they were still able to produce children with other biological men, obviously, and so that way Jack is still the son of Picard. He has half of his genes and all of that, but he's also special in the sense that he's compatible for an energy entity to inhabit at some point, and maybe that energy also somehow influenced their genetic makeup, and maybe that's why Beverly's first son Wesley was also special, with that ability to freeze time and take himself out of time. So that's also kind of a non-linear capability, kind of like the wormhole aliens. So maybe the fact that Beverly gave birth to Wesley was somehow connected with the fact that her entire family was in a love affair with an anaphasic life form for centuries. Maybe that somehow influenced their gene pool, and that's why Wesley was born special. And maybe Jack simply has the same kind of abilities as Wesley, the same potential. Maybe it's genetic. Maybe because he's Wesley's brother, he also has the same kind of abilities. And maybe that's why everyone are after him. Maybe the changelings or their leader, the one giving them orders, maybe they want Jack because of those abilities, because he has an ability to freeze time and take himself outside of time, or teleport anywhere in the galaxy, like the Traveler. And maybe that's why they want him. And maybe the one trying to connect with him is another entity that also wants him for those abilities. So not necessarily a good entity, maybe indeed a power wraith or a prophet or something else entirely. Maybe it's that female caretaker that we saw in Voyager. And remember, the caretakers had a special relationship with the Ocampa people, who also had weird psychic powers that they can manipulate reality, like in the Matrix. And they can also teleport themselves in huge distances and stuff like that. So maybe all the Ocampa people died somehow, and so she's now looking for someone similar, someone with those kinds of abilities, maybe to mate with him or something. And you know, Jack keeps hearing a female voice calling for him. He sees those weird organic tentacles everywhere. And when we saw that entity in her true form, she also seemed to have those kinds of tentacles, and so there are some visual similarities. And you know, earlier in the season there was a quick mention of some Hirogen who somehow got to the Alpha Quadrant from the Delta Quadrant, then Picard met some of them, and Admiral Janeway was mentioned more than once in the season, so maybe she will show up in the final episode as a surprise, and maybe we'll have some kind of final confrontation with Suspiria, and maybe Suspiria is actually good now, trying to help them out. But it's also possible they will just invent their own new entity, that's something that we never saw before. And I personally prefer that they do bring back something from the past and tie up a loose end from the past, if it's done well. If it's not done in a stupid way, that will just ruin it. So these are some of my theories on who Jack Crusher might be communicating with, and in my next video I will be talking about the main villain of the season, the one giving orders to the changelings, and who that might be from Star Trek's history. I have several interesting theories. So if you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, please subscribe, click the notification bell to see updates of new videos, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.